Welcome to the Grief and Belief podcast, where we share stories of hope. Thank you for joining us. We hope this powerful story will help you feel God's love for you today.
Welcome to another episode of the Grief and Belief podcast. I'm David Mickelson.
I'm Corey Andrews.
And today we have Jen Dyal here, who's going to share the story of her son, Jack. And we're very excited to talk to Jen. We've had some opportunity to visit with her before, and she's got a lot of wonderful things to share. She came to us by way of April Gallier, who you've heard her episode. And if you haven't, it would be good to go back and listen to April's. But we're really excited to have Jen here with us.
Yeah, thank you, Jen, for joining us. And so Jack was 9 at the time.
Yes.
And and this happened in 2016. Mm-hmm. So he would be 18.
Yep.
Wow.
Turning 19 this year.
Wow.
I'd have an adult.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So, yeah, it's been a minute.
Well, we're excited to get to know him and learn more about him. Thanks for sharing him with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And Jen's going to talk to us specifically about forgiveness,
Yeah.
which is an important and heavy topic. And so we're excited for her to share some thoughts and her personal experience about that. And so why don't we start off, Jen, with you just telling us a little bit about you, help everybody get to know you.
Okay. I feel like the older I get, this gets weirder. Like, I'm Jen Dyal, 42. I grew up in California, Southern California, but I've lived in Utah longer. So at this point, I should probably start claiming that I'm from Utah.
I'm the same. I'm out of California until I was 18, but I will still claim California.
I don't know why.
I love Utah.
It's like where you come from, right?
Yep.
And where you come from is important. So It does. It shapes us and it makes us who we are. Mm-hmm. So I'm from California. I have a lovely, maybe handsome. I shouldn't say lovely. I have a handsome husband named Nate. We've been married for 19 years. And then we have 4 kids, 3 of which you see. The 4th one has already made his way to heaven. So Jack was our oldest, and he would be 18. Ethan is now 15. And then we have a 6-year gap, and we have Piper, who is 10, and Abby, who is 8. So we live just happily together, trying to figure out what it's like to be a family all the time. And I teach school. I teach 3rd grade. I love people. I love watching people grow. And teaching has just fit that. I used to manage retail for 12 years. Mm-hmm. And my favorite part of that was people development. So when presented the opportunity to go back to school and teach, it seemed like a no-brainer. I started off at BYU in elementary ed. Had I just held on to that, I could have saved myself some years down the road. But it worked out on the timing it needed to. And so here I am. I taught kindergarten last year and 3rd grade this year. And I find it actually really interesting. Sometimes I stop and think like, oh, this is the year I teach the kids that are the age that Jack was when he died. He was in 3rd grade. And so that's also affected the way I want to interact with 3rd graders, actually. But we just keep going, keep doing. And I'm just grateful for all the interactions I get through the day. And I don't know. What else do I like to do?
Well, I think,
don't know.
So when I reached out to you, before I reached out to you,
Yeah.
I looked you up on Facebook, as one is wont to do.
Yes.
And found out that we have this connection of Bigfoot. So Ava was a big Bigfoot fan.
Yes.
She liked to debate with her friends whether he was real or not. She was really passionate about it. She, on her 18th birthday, just 2 months before she passed away, she took her friends into the mountains to do Bigfoot calls, do tree knocks. She was really into
I love it.
And so I found like your family business, what you and your husband also do in addition to the teaching, is Bigfoot related. So maybe just share a little bit about that.
Yes, we are Bigfoot cabinet refinishing. And it's funny because Jack and his best friend Spencer had plans. Before he died, they had plans to go that summer squatching. Mm-hmm. Spencer's dad was going to take him squatching. So we are heavily enlaced in Bigfoot. And the business we started in 2018. And we were trying to figure out, what do you name a business? And I remember Nate coming and being like, hey, what if we do, I don't know, Jack's cabinetry or whatever. And I remember feeling really quick to think, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the right idea. One thing I don't want any of my other kids to feel like is that we've taken a kid who has died and put them up on a pedestal.
Yep.
And so we've been cognizant of that from the beginning. But one thing that all of us did love was Bigfoot. And also when we invited Jack's friend Spencer, when we knew Jack wasn't going to make it, he was one of the 2 people we invited up to the hospital before the time of death. And he came up with a note, and he had drawn all different types of Bigfoot, like so a Yeti, a Bigfoot, and he said, "Stay squatchy, my friend." So on our business cards, it actually says "Stay squatchy."
Yes.
And but that kind of spawned just this way for us as a family to continue. We actually have little Bigfoot that for the first 2 years, Ethan took a little stuffed Bigfoot everywhere that Spencer had given him. So Bigfoot was a way that we could still honor Jack, but also make it where it was a family ordeal. Mm-hmm. And so Bigfoot Cabinet Refinishing was born.
Yep.
And it was a lovely way. And I think that's, you do Ava's Stomp. And I think, those are fun, just ways to keep them and remember what they liked and what they did and just keep them with you all the time.
Yep. I love that connection.
Yeah. And Cameron had cupcakes. That was our thing there.
Yes,
She's the last cupcake girl. And it is cool how we make those connections. And then every time you see something, it reminds you of that. Every time I eat a cupcake, I can't eat a cupcake anymore without thinking.
Yeah, you see a Bigfoot sticker on the back of a car and you're like, oh, Ava's winking at us.
Yes.
It's a reminder. And so kind of a fun way. But well, introduce us to Jack. Help us get a feeling for this fun-loving young kid.
Oh, one of my favorite questions to get asked, and honestly, also it has become one of my harder questions to answer. I don't know if that makes sense, and I think that is just kind of the way time works. So as you told me you're going to ask that question, I thought, okay, what would I share? How could I share it? What do I remember? And I asked my kids that the same thing too. And Ethan, he was 6, so he holds on to memories. I think sometimes ones that maybe he's even made up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we let him sure. Because that's how he kind of ties into it. But I was thinking about just Jack and what made Jack special and you ask that about any of your kids. And you kind of start thinking, what would I share about any of my kids? But in particular, one of my favorite things, and it stinks that it had to happen, but after Jack died, his 3rd grade teacher did such a good job. And she sat them all down and let them have a video recording session. And they could go into the corner and they could just talk about Jack. And it's just a video that they posted to YouTube. And I can go find it, but I love listening to it because everybody in that class thought Jack Dyal was their best friend. And as time passed and people are good to send pictures in and things, I've been able to pay attention to small details, and I've noticed the way Jack's hand will be on somebody's hand while he's explaining something in a picture that I was sent of something in school while he's helping someone. And I remember him coming home and being like, "Mom, look at all these things I got." And it was the book fair. And I did not send him to the book fair with any money that day. I did not send him to school at all for him to go spend money at the book fair. I was like, "Where did you get all this stuff from the book fair?" And he was like, "Well, this is from Maggie and this is from Joanna and da-da-da-da." And I was like, you cannot take these girls' money and like just it's fine. They gave me a gift. Yep. Mm-hmm. But as much as I chagrined in that moment, I also know that was because he helped people feel seen. And it didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter what you looked like. It didn't matter what your background was. He was very good at seeing people and connecting to people. And so I think we saw that also at his funeral, just with who showed up and surprising people that you wouldn't expect. But I'm grateful for that. Another thing I love, I have an ingrained picture of him and his brother like sitting in front of the living room, and they're in their boxers and they're just like swivel hipping like around in circles. And we actually in his obituary talk about how he was quick to tell a joke And also that you could see him in the hallway teasing his brother with a pair of underwear on his head, a pair of boxers. And that was classically him, like just funny and engaging, and just super creative. And also honest. There's another story that his teacher told at his funeral. She spoke. And so it was fun. We got to sit back and just listen. And she shared about her birthday and how all the kids were in a portable and all the kids were walking up to go in and, oh, happy birthday, Mrs. Strebe. And people had brought her gifts. And Jack gets up to the front and he's like, happy birthday, Mrs. Strebe. And he hands her this orange octopus-shaped gummy. And I remember sitting in the audience and I was like, I put that in his lunch. Like, I remember putting it in his lunch, which, oh, that's nice that he took it out of his lunch and gave it to his teacher. You know, every adult wants an unwrapped, hand-touched gummy octopus. But he gave it to her. And then he circled back around and was like, Mrs. Strebe, I have to be honest. I forgot it was your birthday. And the octopus, it's actually from my lunch. And I just love that, like, he couldn't even try to do a good deed without there being honesty behind it. And so that was just him. Like, if you think about Boy Scouts, like all the qualities of a Boy Scout, I feel like he was really good at those, like honest, kind, you know, like all those things. But he was just a fun-loving 9-year-old who I think impacted the world far more than we would have expected in a short 9 years. And so, yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's fun to hear these stories. And I can just picture them. Yeah. Right. I feel like I know Jack a little bit now.
Yeah.
And so that's.
Thanks.
And one of the cool parts of that I've noticed through this process of interviewing parents who've lost kids is how often I see some of the parents' characteristics described in their kids. And we haven't known each other super long, but I see like that kindness and that connection and that desire to make sure everybody's seen, and we felt that already in you, and it's cool to see how we see that, how we discover. So we'll never get to meet Jack now, you know, but it's almost like meeting you. I can kind of get a feel for what Jack was kind of like.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Well, tell us a little bit about, not a little bit, tell us the story of Jack's passing. And this is one where, I mean, every person who passes, there's a story behind it.
Yes.
But this one feels like there's, like, you've got to tell the story from beginning to end. And so.
Yeah. Okay. So the story, we talked about his death date, like on his headstone, when you guys talk about the day he died, it was April 15th is what's on his headstone. But the story actually starts before that. So it was April 13th of 2016, which happens to be my husband's birthday. So we had gone that day. I remember grabbing all the kids, and it was turning 36. So we had 3 kids at the time, right? Because Abby hadn't joined us yet. And so I took Jack, Ethan, and Piper, and we went to Partyland, and Nate's favorite color is orange. So we went and grabbed, everybody got to pick 12. So we took the 36 balloons home, floated them up to the air and tied them onto all the things, and waited for Dad to come home. And then we went out for dinner. And I remember at dinner, which is weird, I can't remember where we went to dinner, but I remember the way dinner felt. And I remember thinking to myself, this is so interesting. My kids aren't fighting. Like, that's weird. That is memorable, right? Yeah. And I thought, what a good birthday for their dad. I mean, they just weren't at each other. And we went home, and we had put a sign on the door before, and it just was an orange sign. And happy birthday, happy 36th birthday. And we cut pie. And, well, we got strawberry rhubarb pie. And before we cut it, I was like, oh, well, let's just all run out and take pictures real quick. And Jack had scouts that night. And so we were just trying to fit in all the things. So we sang Nate happy birthday. And we went out and took a picture. And Ethan would not get in the picture. And I remember being a little miffed about it. And I was like, Ethan, well, fine. Then I guess you just won't be in the picture. And weirdly enough, I love that I have a picture of just Nate and Jack. Outside. And we literally, our lives were about to change in a matter of 10 minutes from the moment that picture was taken. So we took the picture, went back in, we had sang happy birthday, and Jack was waiting to go to Scouts. And so he asked to leave, and it was about 6:55 when I told him he could go. And so I told him to kiss his mother goodbye, grab his helmet, and Nate grabbed his slice of pie. We went about life as business, just as usual. So Nate took his pie. Nate loves his solitude, and so cold basement with a slice of pie is perfect birthday.
Sounds like a
scenario.
big birthday. Kind of sounds like a Bigfoot thing. Little
Right?
solitude.
Maybe that, at least channeling that. It channels in so many ways. But he took his pie down, and Jack went out the garage. And I sat down with Ethan, and I was reading him a book, and I was holding Piper on my lap. And at 6:57, I got a phone call, and I answered the phone call. It was my friend who lived down the street. And I picked it up to a woman in hysterics, yelling and just saying, he's been hit, he's been hit, he's been hit. And I was like, what is happening? And she couldn't stop. And I knew what she was saying, but you go into this surreal moment of like, what? Yeah. Like, you don't even live in real life way. At that point. And so I put Piper, who's one, I put Piper on the ground, and I forgot I had Ethan on the couch, and I yelled down to Nate and just said, Jack got hit. And he's like, what? And I said, Jack got hit, and I started to run out the door. And before I could get down, Nate had grabbed the keys, and he's like, get in the car. And literally, it's a block away from our home. So the church is a block down one direction and turn in 2 blocks, and you're at the church. It's inside of our neighborhood. So, and we pulled up, and there was Jack in the middle of the street. And that was the beginning of the rest of our lives in a very different shape. And so when we got to the accident, he was... one of our neighbors was really fortunately lined up, but one of our neighbors is a sheriff, and he happened to be in Young Men's, and it was a missionary youth activity for our church. So a lot of people were walking to the church, and he happened to be right there. So he was able to stabilize him as best as he could. But when we got up, Jack wasn't responsive. He was responsive with his eyes, but we have since that kiss goodbye and love you, I haven't heard him. So, but he was there, and the sheriff just told us to keep talking to him. So I'd watch, and I'd just say, Jack, I'm right here. Okay, look at me. And he was aspirating, and his eyes would start to roll back, and I'd be like, hey, buddy, look at me. He'd take a deep breath. So he was present in that extent. And then the ambulance showed up, and they went ahead and loaded him, and we followed them to the hospital. They went to Utah Valley first, and Utah Valley didn't have what they needed. So they couldn't really give us answers. A random fact that I really like, that I always tend to skip over. When Jack was in the street, Shaylin, who happens to, be a member of the church with us, he said, Dad. And I thought it was interesting. He stopped calling us Nate and Jen. He called us Mom and Dad. So his mom talked to him, and Dad, give him a blessing. And I remember Nate being like, what? And he was like, it doesn't matter, just put your hand, because he had his helmet on still, right? Mm-hmm. So he had his helmet, and so you're used to giving a blessing by laying on the hands of your head, and so he just said, put your hands on him. So Nate did, and I didn't remember the blessing, and I don't think Nate had any wits about him to know what he was saying. So Nate gave him a blessing, and that was important, and I thought, it's super worth noting. We'll circle back for a second, but he got a blessing in that moment. And then we went to the hospital, and that's where then we got blessings while we were waiting.
But still not knowing what the outcome is
anything.
Going to
Nobody
be, right?
could offer anything. And so people, the man who had driven Nate to the hospital, because Nate took a car ride back to our house because we had abandoned our children.
Your 1-year-old and your 4-year-old
yes,
are home alone.
Are home alone with no idea what's going on. And my friend April, that you mentioned, is actually who drove me to Utah Valley. So we split for a minute. And then Nate was driven by the man who gave us a blessing at the hospital. But we had no answers. And then they told us, well, we're going to life flight him to Primary Children's. And one of you can go.
In the
helicopter. So I took my first helicopter ride of my life. And I remember loading up. And you just walk through these kind of fuzzy, foggy, like you're just doing what people are telling you to do because you don't really know anything different. And I remember getting on the helicopter, and I remember it was dark at this point because it was 7 p.m. is like the time frame reference, right? And at this point, it's later. The sun has gone down. And I remember being in the helicopter and looking down, and they're doing stuff in the back. I could hear them. We had headphones on, and I could hear everything. But I remember looking around and thinking, oh, it is pretty. It is pretty. And there were just twinkling lights all the way. I mean, it's like an 18-minute helicopter ride from Utah Valley up to Salt Lake for Primary Children's. And the pilot was trying to talk to me, and I'm sure that's got to be the most awkward thing for him. But he was just, and I was like, yeah, no, I've never been on a helicopter before. And then in the headphones, the people, the EMT in the back was like, hey, Mom. And I said, yeah. She's like, okay, so we need to chat. I said, okay. She's like, so Jack is stabilized. She didn't go into much depth, but she said, Jack is stabilized, but we're not getting any reflex or response. And so we want to prep you because when we get off of the helicopter, they're going to do what are called noxious stimuli, and it's going to possibly look a little aggressive. And I just remember sitting there thinking, okay. I still didn't grasp what that meant. Just, okay.
I'm picturing like smelling salts.
Right. Like you don't, like no one explains to you what noxious stimuli are. And I'm like, okay, all right. And so they take him off. We landed on the helicopter pad. And the only thing I remember is the gurney getting pushed in front of me, and his Boy Scout belt was hanging off the edge. I could see his Boy Scout belt, which we have with all the smashed belt loop badge things. We have it. But I remember seeing that, and we went inside, and then they take you into this kind of open area because it's just like their, I don't know, trauma response essentially. And there are people going in and out and in and out. And somebody, I don't know who, sat me down on a chair, and I was just sitting there not knowing what to do. And this woman comes out, and it's clear she's in a white coat and beautiful, which is so funny because I remember she came down and she introduced herself and knelt by me. And I just was like, you are beautiful. And she was like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. But it's like the weirdest stuff that you remember. But then she said, can I get you a blanket? And I said, no, I'm okay. She said, we're going to get you a blanket. And now looking back, I'm realizing I was being treated for shock. I didn't realize why they were giving me a blanket at the time. But she offered kindly and then essentially said, no, we're doing it. Yeah. And then after I had a blanket on me, she asked, is there anything that we can get you? And this is totally out of nowhere. I'd never had this before, but I said, can I get a cup of hot water? And she was like, okay, do you want tea? We have hot chocolate? I said, no, I don't want to drink it. I just want to hold it. And she was like, okay. So she came back with a mug of hot water. And I have random things that I've kept in my phone over the years, and this is one of them. But I had never been that person who asked for hot water before. Right. Yeah. And I sat there and I held the hot water, and there was just something so grounding about the heat and the warmth of that mug. And it was peaceful and calm because of a cup of hot water. And I've thought back to that, and I consistently had the thought go through, like, just be still. Just be still. And as I've written other things about that moment, I know that that was a gift and a blessing for me to know it was time to be still and to feel grounded. And so that weird ask was because I will tell you, the Spirit just said, get a cup of hot water. And now I have utilized that in my life. And when people go through hard things, weirdly, I will I will get a cup of hot water and just hold it. But so random fact. But that was the 13th. And then we spent the next time, his brain pressure, we didn't know. He wasn't clotting properly, so they couldn't give us a brain pressure. So they just went about knowing it was high. And then at one point, there was a brain surgeon who was in from the East Coast. We had everything, like the best scenario lined up that we could. And the right people in the right place. And I remember him pulling me aside. Nate hadn't gotten there yet. And they pulled you into a little room, and there was a social worker there with me because they don't want you to be alone. And she sat down on the couch next to me, and this doctor, I don't remember his name, but he was in the room, and he said, we need to have a conversation. And I said, okay. I was like, well, my husband's not here yet. And he's like, well, then you'll have to relay the information when he comes. And he was like, we don't know how bad it is, but we know it is bad. And you need to be prepared that he more than likely will not make it. And I was like, okay. And he looked at me and said, will you repeat back what I just told you? Interesting.
Yep.
And I said, that he might not make it. He said, no. I need you to be prepared that he more than likely will not make it. Can you tell me that? And I was like, he more than likely will not make it. He's like, okay. And as soon as he did it, the social worker put her hand on my shoulder. And this is unlike me. You guys don't know me very well, but I bet you could figure out this isn't like me. And as soon as she did, I balked, like I shirked completely away from her hand. I didn't want to be touched.
Yep.
And I was like, please don't touch me. That's all I could say. And that was my level of processing that I had. And so he left, and the social worker said, would you like me to stay? And I said, no. And then I was like, I'm sorry for that. She said, nope, we just don't want you to be alone. But if you'd like some time. And I said, yep. And then at that point, I don't even remember what happened. I just remember Nate came in, and I was kneeling over the side of the couch, and I was just sobbing. And then my husband walked into a wife who was in hysterics and was like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And I was like, he's not going to make it. Like, he's not going to make it. And he was like, no. Like, that's not right. And I was like, no, like, he's not going to make it. And bless April walked into that room with Nate. And she had her own experience with primary children's and had been there a lot and felt comfortable. She was like, no, I'm going to go talk to somebody. Yeah. And she left. Well, she never came back. But that was the beginning of Nate and I figuring out what it looked like for possibly not making it. And we just sat outside of a room waiting for someone to tell us what was happening. And then Dr. Outson, and that's the first doctor, I remember his name. And he would talk to us, and he said, okay, can we go sit down and have a conversation? I'm like, okay. So we went in, and he's talking about brain pressures and things, and what would you like to do? He's in a paralytic state. We're making him cold. Next step is a medically induced coma. We're like, okay, let's do it. Medically induced coma. Let's go. And so we said yes.
You still haven't seen him.
No,
yet.
We have
You're
not.
Still out, like...
We've been outside of rooms just kind of seeing glimpses of him in beds, right? But we haven't seen him since we got there. We're just in the halls. And so we said yes. And then we're sitting outside. And I looked at Nate and I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what happens with a medically induced coma? Like, what are we talking about? Like, and our brains started to kind of come to a little bit. I would feel like is probably what's happening. And so the next time Dr. Outson came out, I said, excuse me, I just have a question. What does medically induced coma mean? Like, what happens? And he's like, you're asking the right questions. And I love that man for waiting for us to ask the right questions. The information was not shoved down my throat. Like, he asked, and so he said, let's go sit back down. I said, no, we're fine. We're in a hallway. I'm on like a rolly chair. Nate was standing up, and like, no, we're fine. And he said, nope, for me, I need to sit down. And so he went and he sat down with us. And at that point, we found out that his brain pressure was high enough that he would not be able to speak and he would not be able to eat. And I remember that when he was explaining feeding tube, breathing tube, all those things, I remember being like, wait, I wouldn't be able to spoon feed my baby? Like, we're at that point?
That's how bad it is, yeah.
Yeah. And he said, no. And I was like, well, how do we know? And he said, well, we put him into a medically induced coma. We do everything we can. But then when we take them out of the coma, it can take twice as long to come out of what we have been put into. And Nate and I were like, we can't do that. And I'm not saying that this is anybody else's journey, but we could not imagine the vivacious 9-year-old boy who loved people and being outside and rollerblading and joking. We could not imagine him being in a bed or a chair for the rest of his life. And it's okay for people who need that, but for us, that was not the right path. And so we decided against the coma, which meant we were going to let nature take its course. And, but you don't know what that looks like. You have hope that it's going to be something good, but you don't know what it looks like. And then at that point, they were able to get his body clotting. So I don't know if you guys know about brain pressure at all. Do you know about brain pressure?
We had our experience with it.
Okay. So like numbers, like when we talk about how we have about like an 8 with brain pressure to keep our heads from just bouncing our brain around, right? And then if you have a headache, like you're about a 12. And then if you've got a really bad migraine, you're anywhere between that 12. But once you hit 20, your brain starts to kill itself. We didn't know that. We got that information, and they said we were able to figure it out, and Jack's brain pressure is at 74. And so we proceeded the next bit of time, and we hit goals, which were still, his brain pressure came down to 44, which seemed like this amazing feat. But halfway. Realistically, it was twice as much pressure as he needed to still just stop his brain from shutting down. And so I was grateful, though, for the doctors inside of that while he hit different goals. I remember Dr. Outson coming in and seeing that it was at 46, and he like fist pumped the air. Like, yes, even though we were so far off. So far off. But I was grateful for the humanity of people who saw my child as a person, not as a number or a case, and who saw us as a family wanting that number. But so, yeah, we've written thank you notes, and that's one I've never been able to deliver. And one day I will. And weirdly, I want to write it to his wife. Is that not bizarre? I want to thank the woman who supports the man who deals with that every day. Because
he's got to come home.
Can you imagine?
Right?
Yeah.
He's got to decompress that. I don't know how he does that, but no. And so at that point, then we knew it was time of death, was what we were looking at. And we were waiting for it. The nurses told us that eventually his brain would herniate. And so that was on the 14th. And Nate went and took a shower and then came back. And it was like, that was when Jack came down the lowest to 44. And I felt like he was just giving us time for us to let Nate go do what he needed and then to come back. And as soon as his dad came in, I remember being like, he got to 44. Look, he's at 44. And within maybe 5 minutes, it started to creep back up. And our nurse, Tracy, was like, so let me tell you what's going to happen. So his brain has so much pressure, it's actually going to herniate and it's going to break the brainstem. It's going to disconnect the brainstem because it has nowhere else to go. And then at that point, we'll look at brain death. And so we watched it, and we watched it climb, and then it hit that 74, and then it went up to 86, and then it released all of its pressure. And so we knew that it was done. But that's according to Earth and science and doctors and all those things. they have to do tests, brain stimulus tests. They do the noxious stimulus again, which is, now I know, shooting like really cold water in your ear because your eyes will instinctively move to the other side, and like poking and things like that. But there's reflexes that if nothing else is working, those will work. But they do them 12 hours apart with 2 different doctors so that there's no mistake. Mm-hmm. There's no mistakes made. We're going to make sure that we have brain death. And that's when we asked 2 people, his best friend Spencer, who was 8 at the time, to come up if it was good for him to come up, and his 3rd grade teacher. And they got to come up, and then we time of death on the 15th. And then I find it really interesting because then we got to wait and do organ donation. And I remember when they came in, because they come in fast. They come in fast because there's a time sensitivity. Uh-huh. And I remember they brought the idea to us. Like, so we just want you to think about it. We just want you to think about it. You don't have to give us an answer yet. But we are the Donor Connect team. And what we do, and they explain it, and we're like, yes. And they looked at us kind of like, okay, slow down. Yeah. Like, this is a big deal. Slow down. You can talk about it. And Nate and I both looked at each other, and immediately we just connected. Like, we knew like that was the right answer. And we said yes. And I remember saying, if that little boy could talk, and if he knew he could help people, he would want to help people. So yes. And then from the 15th to the 17th, science might tell you that he was gone, but I will tell you he was present. And as we sat in a room, he had to get his heart in working condition. He was able to donate his heart, his liver, his kidneys, his pancreas. And so the first ones are easy. They find matches, liver, kidneys, pancreas, they go. But the heart has to be in working order to function without any medicine. So essentially they made him cold and took away all of his need to do things on his own to try to save him. And then to be able to save somebody else, they have to bring him back to life. But he's not there, according to doctors.
Right. Yeah.
But I got to lay in a bed with a warm, breathing body, with a heartbeat. And I listened to a recording, which is so funny that I have it, the Christmas before I sing in church. And there's a rule that you're not supposed to record meetings. But I had asked Jack to just do an audio recording, but he didn't get that. And he literally recorded me singing in this trio. And it's Silent Night. And I listened to that song on repeat over and over. And I just kept thinking of the peace that comes from a Savior in that silent night. And I did. That nurse was probably wondering what the heck. Cute Nurse Ruby was probably wondering why I was listening to Christmas songs in April. But I found solace in Silent Night. Yeah. And then come the 17th, it was time. And he did his final EKGs and his heart tests and proved that he was strong enough and his heart was good enough. And we pushed his body down. And they tell you that when they take him off machines, sometimes it goes wrong. And they have to be able to push him down with just a hand pump of oxygen. And everything has to be able to function. But there's no machines anymore. And sometimes hearts stop. And if the heart stops, they can't move forward. And so I remember we said a little prayer that it would be okay. And that the little girl who was waiting for her heart would get her heart. And I have never been more proud as a mom than I was when I got to kiss his chest one more time before they pushed him over the yellow and black line. 2, which I note, the Red Bone, Come and Get Your Love, from the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack, because it was his favorite. And organ donation is amazing and very personalized, and they take really good care of you. But one thing we had asked was if they could play the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack the entire operation. And so they did. And then we asked if they could start on song 8. So when we were waiting, you heard the doctors in the back go, cue song 8. And then through the double doors, you hear, and they came, and that's what he left us on. And so sometimes I go to the cemetery and I play that song really loud if no one's around. And it's just another way we connect. But they gave us back that CD, Ethan's armadillo. He bought him at the gift store, went into surgery with him and came back. And Ethan has the armadillo on his bed. And we celebrate Hero Day every year. We call it Hero Day, and it's the day organ donation happened. And we went home, and we just waited for a phone call to know that everything was in other people and working and functioning. And it was interesting because we went from moments of despair to moments of ultimate hope on someone else's behalf. And that has been a gift. And we've met one of the people, and it's been so great to see goodness come out of something so heavy. But that is a very long rendition of the accident and our side of things.
Yeah.
Our side of things.
You have to hear the whole thing, right? I mean, it's not a story that can be shortened.
No.
And so thank you for going into the detail, and thank you for sharing. Those are, I'm remembering some of our hospital experiences, and those are some of the experiences I don't want to remember very much, or as infrequently as possible because they're painful, they're hard. So thank you for being willing to open up and share those special and sacred experiences.
Yeah. Wow. That's so good.
Thank you.
So good, man.
It's weird. Sometimes and sorry I cut you off, but as much as I don't like the stuff that hurts, it reminds me that it happened. Do you feel that at all?
Absolutely. Sometimes I ache to feel that.
Yes. No, I literally have talked about hunting the ache, that sometimes I hunt the stuff that makes me feel, even if it hurts, because, and I think the only way to phrase it is that it is simultaneously attached to my love. The reason I hurt is because I love. And so it's silly that, I'm like, yes, please invite me and let me cry on your show while but it's like this weird cathartic thing. And I think sometimes that release is necessary, but but it happened.
This is a terrible comparison, but it's kind of like a sad movie. You know that you're going to watch it and then it's going to make you cry.
Yes.
But you want to, I mean? You want to because you feel.
Yeah. Yes. No. And we're meant to, right?
Yeah.
We are meant to feel. We're supposed to.
So, Jen, there's part of the story we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
Which is the lady who hit Jack.
Yes.
So can you just share with us a little bit about her and your experience? You've interacted with her. You've talked to us about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, her number's in my phone and we text not all the time. I think we have a relationship that is understood, but it's interesting because even part of that story, I feel like I skipped a bunch because there is a preface to the rest of that story, right? So, and it starts 2 weeks before Jack's accident. So at the time, my church calling, I had a leadership calling, and so we would have a meeting Sunday mornings, and it was normal on Sunday. So I would go, I'd pull out of the parking lot and go right back out. It was the office end was closest to the exit. But that Sunday, I found myself pulling out and just going around the other way of the building. Not weird, just different. And then as I came around to the other side, there was a lady walking out. And something just kind of made me think I should stop and ask that lady her name. That's not weird for me. Like, I will talk to people at the grocery store. So, like, not hard. And I rolled down my window and I said, "Hi, I've seen you." We went to church at the same time, or same building, different times. And I'd seen her in the library. And I said, I've seen you in the library, but I don't know your name. She said, "Oh, my name's Lynette." And I said, "Oh, I'm Jen Dyal. Nice to meet you. I'm sure I'll have to ask your name again." And she's like, oh, yeah, okay. And I said, well, have a great Sunday. And that was it. And then 2 weeks later, when we pulled up to the accident, Lynette was in the middle of the intersection on the other side. And it was very clear that it was her who hit him. And bless that woman, because she had to deal with her own things in that moment. And Nate and I were in the middle. But when the paramedics said, Mom, like, you need to move. They had to do their own thing. I turned around, and Lynette had made it to the back side of me instead of where she was before. And she was sitting on the curb and was visibly upset. And it's one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given. I was able to turn around and call her by name. And I said, Lynette, stand up. And we hugged. We did not talk. We hugged until Nate was like, Jen, we got to go. And that's when I ended up in the car with April. And I remember April telling me, just as any good friend does, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. He's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. And I remember hearing that, but being like in this tunnel vision of focus in the passenger seat and just staring out the window. I remember thinking and saying out loud, I don't know how she's going to do it. I don't know how she's going to do it. And there's been a lot of things I've had to kind of face as I've looked back at that time. I had a time in the hospital when I remember people were praying for miracles. We were getting texts, we're praying for a miracle, praying for a miracle. And I hadn't asked for one. I hadn't. I didn't barter with God. I didn't put anything on the table. And I didn't feel like I was missing that piece, but I remember standing at the foot of his bed and asking myself, do I believe in miracles? Do I believe in miracles? And I remember very peaceably feeling, yes, I do, but this is not the one you're going to get. And so I think back to the time where I'm driving in a car and my friend is telling me that he's going to be okay. And I was already connected to a lady who I had met in a parking lot 2 weeks earlier. And now I know that was the Spirit telling me to stop and ask that lady her name, because the Lord knew I needed that name. And the miracle also came that part of it was that I didn't barter and I didn't do things that the Lord was not going to be able to follow through on for me. And I am grateful that the Lord provided the miracle that I needed, not the one I was asking for, or not asking for, but that everybody was asking for, and that I was spared maybe some frustration and anger that would have come with I was willing to do. And I would have been willing to do anything, but that was one of the miracles that we had in that moment that I had personally. But I have felt attached to Lynette from the beginning. And I think that kind of, after the funeral, I went and I visited her. And I don't know why. It was just something I wanted to do. But we got to sit at her kitchen table and we got to talk. And I got to hear about her and learn about her. And now we miss a kid. We miss a kid every day. But there's a woman who knows that she caused our missing. And I have felt very close to her, and I love her. And that was a gift from the beginning. And that has brought us to a different place and a different place of healing. But when we were at the kitchen table, I remember we were discussing things and she was talking about some dark places that her side of her story takes her. And I remember thinking, oh, that's so sad. Please don't do that on her behalf. And it's actually when this forgiveness topic starts to come into play. I remember saying, we forgive you. We forgive you. And I had also in the hospital, she had texted, she had gotten our phone number, and she was trying to wish us well and hope. I mean, she had hope too. Nobody wants to be the person who has to deal with that. And at that point, we knew he wasn't going to make it. So again, in that text message in the hospital, I had to figure out how to relate to a woman that the kid you're hoping to make it is not going to. But in that mix, I said, I just want you to know that we've forgiven you. So hospital, I said it. And then in her home, I said it. And I left her house. We hugged and I wished her well. And we talked about, I'm sure we'll keep contact. But I left and I got in the car and I had this overwhelming feeling of like, oh my gosh, I owe my husband an apology. And I sat in the car and I thought, I've been saying we, and I should have been saying I, because I had forgiven her, but I was including someone else in my forgiveness. And so I went home and Nate and I went about things, and then when we went to lay down that night, I said, I need to tell you I'm sorry. I owe you an apology. He was like, what for? And I said, when I was visiting Lynette today, I told her that we forgave her, and I realized I'm including you in a me thing. And I haven't even asked you if you've forgiven her, or if you want to forgive her, or what that looks like for you. And he very quickly was like, well, yeah, I've forgiven her. That's what we're supposed to do. And there came in the first time I realized what different paths we were on with the same goal in mind, but the same path was going to be walked very differently. And I had come to forgive a woman that God connected me to before, who I felt connected to and drawn to, and I forgave out of compassion and love. And I had a husband who came from a place of forgiveness biblically.
Duty
and obedience.
Yep.
Yeah.
That we have been asked to forgive 7 times 70. And, sometimes I am keeping track and tally marks. I'm wondering when we get to 490, but he came at it differently. And then I've been able to watch that play out for the last 9 years and watch it very poignantly different in different family members and in different ways. But I know, and that's one thing we talked about, was that forgiveness, there is power in forgiveness. But this topic is so hard for me because it's not, everybody needs their time and everybody needs their space. And I've seen that firsthand. But so I want to talk about it because it's important, but I also want anybody listening to know that there is space and time, and that, yes, there is power, but there's not a right way or a wrong way to grieve, and that there is a way that we get there, and that through the Savior we can get there.
I'm just thinking about Elder Anderson's book, The Divine Gift of Forgiveness.
Yeah.
And feeling like you received this gift of forgiveness so quickly.
Yeah.
And others might receive the gift later.
Yes.
And that's okay. And that's absolutely okay.
100%.
Because I feel like it is a gift from God that we try to get, we actively work for, but it comes when it comes.
Yeah.
And absolutely okay.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of that wise doctor that you told us about, where he told you about the induced coma, I think it was, and then he said, "We're waiting for you to write." He was waiting for you to ask the right questions, and I just think that God, I think, is very patient, and realizes that sometimes there's some trauma, or there's some shock that we go through in life that's going to take us some time to be ready to ask the right questions. And I think, like that good doctor, I think he's patiently waiting, for us to be ready and prepared to ask those right questions, and then he can explain more or teach us, more. And I'm grateful for that perspective.
Yes,
that he's good like that.
He is. Well, and I know, in my family, I've watched that and had to make space for that. So, I mean, I have the experience with my husband, right? But then I have 3 kids. I have 3 kids, and it's been interesting to watch. And I think anybody who has watched children grieve knows that it comes developmentally. Ethan was 6 when his big brother died, and he didn't know what to do with it. I've been thinking a lot back to the time when at the funeral, when we walked in, and he was just a 6-year-old who was upset. And he walked in and sat down, and he kept hitting his head on the back of the pew. He just kept hitting his head on the back of the pew. And I just put my arm behind him so he didn't hurt his head, and we continued to let him hit it. I could tell Nate was getting frustrated because it's a 6-year-old acting up in the middle of a funeral, right? But and then because of that, then he took his boutonniere off. And that's when he took the needle and literally just like shredded the boutonniere. Just shredded it. And I remember Nate putting his hand out to stop him, and I just slipped my napkin under, or my little tissue underneath, and I was like, he's okay. Just let him. And Ethan continued to just pull it apart, and he was like, I hate God. I hate Jesus. I hate them. I hate him. And he needed space for that. He didn't need to be corrected right then and there. He just needed to be able to rip a boutonniere to shreds. And then life continued. Life continues. And then a few years ago, he was probably 12. And we had a reawakening of grief. It happens cyclically. I feel like there's just times where they're like, wait, what? Or, oh, I don't get this anymore. I'm missing this. Or children just connect differently. And then he's older, and he realized that there was someone responsible. And that night was hard. It was hard. And he was just in his room, and he was swearing and writhing on the floor and just so angry, and was like, I hate her. And as a mom, all I could do was sit, because I couldn't fix it. But I also feel like I was gifted in that moment the space and clarity to say it's okay to just sit, and you don't have to fix it. Just be here. And so he went about his whole time, and he finally calmed down, and then we had a conversation about Jesus. And all I could do was offer that I get it. Like, we get mad. It's frustrating. You can hate. We have emotions. That's what's going to happen. But our goal is not to get stuck here. Our goal is not to get stuck. And for me, and I was telling him that for me, I do that through Jesus. There's no other way around that than through the atonement of Jesus Christ. And so, buddy, I just want you to think about that. But all I could do was invite him. I couldn't force feed it down his throat. I couldn't. And that's where we left that. And I've learned as a parent to give him all the room that he needs. I don't want to be stifled, and he doesn't want to be stifled. And we need to be able to experience life as it comes. But that without Jesus, it's really hard. Mm-hmm. It's really hard. And he doesn't immediately fix everything. It's taken care of, but it's not immediately fixed. Yeah. And then Piper, just this year, she's 10. And it was her turn. It was actually on the 15th of April this year. And she was upset. And she was missing her brother. And she was just saying how she doesn't have enough pictures of him. And she can't remember, she was too little. And then she realized, for lack of better words, that someone was responsible. And so she spiraled differently. It was a different version, but it was like, well, I don't like that. I don't like her. No, I really don't like her. I hate her. And I watched this different progression. She didn't writhing on the floor. She wasn't swearing, but there was room for that. But now there was room for a different conversation as well. And I actually was listening to her, and I was like, I know, and that's going to be hard. But we're not meant to stick in hate. And so I don't know if you know, but I was like, I actually talked to Lynette today. And I called her, I texted her to just let her know I was thinking about her because, Piper, I love Lynette. And she looked at me like I was insane. Yep. Like, what, Mom? Almost betrayed, actually. Not just insane, but like, how dare I? Mm-hmm. And I said, and sis, you know what? You don't have to. You don't have to. But we're not meant to get stuck, and we are meant to forgive. And you will feel lighter one day when you can find that. And then I watched my cute daughter on Hero Day this year. She presented to her own class. This is the first time she's ever done this. She's presented to my 3rd grade class, and she presented to her 4th grade class and gave them the rendition of Hero Day, who it's for, her brother, why we celebrate it, organ donation. And then she took questions at the end. And somebody asked about the lady who hit him. That didn't happen in my class, but it happened in her class. And she very calmly from the front of the room said, I don't really want to talk about that. I'm not ready to forgive her yet. And that's okay. And then Mom from the back said, can I mention something though, Pipes? Is that okay? And we talked about how we are meant to feel. I mean, and it's school. I can't go Jesus in school, right? So I'm like, we are meant to feel, and it's okay. Piper has emotions, and sometimes you're going to have an emotion, and you are meant to feel that emotion. But then you have to decide what we're going to do with it. But guess what? No one can force you through it. And you need to have the time for you to process it. So Piper's not ready yet. I was like, but I actually do talk to the lady who hit Jack, and she's doing well. I answered the question. She's doing much better. Like, we keep in contact, and she still has hard days. But it's hard for all of us. But Piper is allowed her time. But I was so proud in that moment to watch my daughter be able to know that that was her goal, but she was not ready yet. And I feel like that's part of giving ourselves that space and letting Jesus do the work. I don't need to force my daughter. I don't. No. I don't. But I was like, oh, okay. Like, she knows, but it's okay. And I don't have to fix it because it's not my job. I just get to love her and support her and consistently invite her back to Jesus.
Yeah. But well, in school, you can't talk about Jesus. Yeah. But in our podcast, we really like to. Yeah. And so, Jen, considering your experience with grief, what do you now believe about Jesus Christ?
Yeah. I sit with this question, and I think my answer is still the same. And so it takes me back to a different experience, but it was right after Jack died. I had a sister-in-law who was in town. And she isn't sure how she feels about God. And we had come into a routine of picking her up while she was in town. She didn't have a car. Going and getting a drink in the morning and then going by the cemetery. And we did it all very quietly. It was just kind of a quiet thing that kind of kept us all going in that little space. And when we pulled up to the cemetery that day and we pulled up next to Jack, we didn't get out. We just sat, and she said, do you think God made this happen? And I think anybody listening who's dealing with grief would be like, what a rude question to ask somebody so quickly. So I mean, we were not even a week out from putting Jack in the ground, and she was asking a very loaded question. And I quickly kind of took spiritual inventory of how I felt about everything I had learned from the time I was young. Did I believe in a plan of salvation, that there was a purpose, that there is a God, that the atonement happened, that Jesus is real, that he is my Savior, Redeemer, and makes all things possible? Did I believe that? And then did I believe in all the doctrines I've learned? And I thought about who I see Heavenly Father to be. God is my Heavenly Father. And that I don't believe that a dad, because he's my Heavenly Dad, that he would wake up with me one morning and say, oh, your turn. And it's it's your turn. Like that it's a game of roulette. Like I just don't feel like that could possibly be the kind of dad I have. And, but I do believe that God follows the laws of nature and that he is bound by nature's laws. And yes, there are miracles that happen inside of that, but most of the things that happen continue. You know, we read about like without justice, that God would cease to be God, and that there are things that have to follow through, and that there's a mercy through the atonement. But in that sense, I started thinking that God knew what was going to happen because he knows me so well, and he knew Jack so well, and he knew Lynette so well, and he still does. But that morning wasn't a matter of waking up and saying it's your turn, but that God could see what was coming, because we were going to be able to wake up and make choices. I know we don't believe in predestination. Like we are here to make choices. We made that decision. And so the day started, and whether I brushed my teeth or not, that's a choice. Whether I sent Jack to Scouts 5 minutes earlier when he asked and I said no, whether I did that or not, those are choices. But God knew me, and he knows my heart, and he knew how I would answer those questions. And he could see the trail already ahead of me. And I have come to find that time and time again, I am grateful for a God who gives me a choice. That he loves me, and he knows me, and he can see all things. But he doesn't take away my ability to choose. And how I handle grief is a choice. And how I choose to forgive is a choice. And how we move forward as a family is a choice. And I am so grateful for a God who gave me that choice. And then for a Savior who is able to carry me through every stinking choice, good or bad, that he fills in the gaps and carries me in the waiting periods, and that he is there the whole time. But he never forces me to come to him. It's a choice. And I just am grateful all the time for that. He is a lot of things, but he's not making my life happen. He's going to help fill it. Mm-hmm. And he's going to make it whole. But he's not, I think we talked about, he's not puppeteering. Yeah. He's not puppeteering me. And I am grateful for a God who gives me the love and trust and faith to be able to do that. And for a brother who takes care of it.
Well, Jen, thank you. Thank you for everything. We've loved your thoughts and your spirit and your energy, and
so good.
You've been wonderful. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
We love Jack. He's one of our heroes now.
We have to celebrate Hero Day too.
Yep.
Yeah, come join us.
Cool.
Well, thank you everybody for listening, and we'll be around next week with another wonderful interview.
Thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their story of hope. If you know someone who might be blessed by hearing this message, please share it with them. We would love it if you would subscribe, rate, and review, and comment on our podcast so others can find it. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, as well as join our Grief and Beliefs Facebook group. Thank you to our sponsor, High Five Live Tours, where fun and joy meet on inspiring travel experiences. Special thanks to our producer, Misty Lynn Howard. Check out her history podcast called Faith Ignited. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.